introduce to you Dr. Jose Bonilla. Okay, let me go through a real quick introduction here. A lot of degrees. Ph.D. in analytical chemistry from the University of Oklahoma. The MSc, also from analytical chemistry from the University of Oklahoma. Bachelor of Science, yes, okay. Bethel, he's also from Bethel College, a doctorate from there. He started his scientific career at Argonne National Laboratory, where he worked in research projects for the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Dr. Bonilla has over 30 years of industry experience in research and development of a broad variety of products. He has worked in the development of advanced pharmaceutical products in the genomics area, based on the synthetic DNA and RNA. Now that's really important. He's one of the scientists that helped develop the RNA, which you're going to hear about, which is what they're doing that is the foundation which they're doing this so-called vaccine on, okay? So that makes him, of course, with everything else that he has, very much an authority, that's why you're here today, to listen, to know about that, and so how you can take this information and use that, of course, in your daily lives as you encounter the rest of the world. Amen? So with that, Dr. Jose Bonilla, if you don't mind coming up, and of course with our friend Anthony McDaniel and Nick Champlin, they'll be doing the panel tonight. Give them all a hand.
We're going to do our best to try to just facilitate Dr. Bonilla. And when we first started talking with him, we started answering questions, and they were long answers, and we kind of got lost in it. And so we've talked about this day several times, and so we're going to kind of whittle him down, and so we can leave with very concise pieces of data. But he's a godly man, a spiritual man, a very sensitive man. And my brother Nick, why don't you get us started to get acquainted with Dr. Bonilla?
So I believe that Dr. Bonilla has a little presentation that in a moment he's going to share with you, just by way of introducing himself. I was privileged to meet Dr. Bonilla last year. He came to our church, and we began to fellowship together, and just hit it off. And the first breakfast, I think, lasted 3 hours. It was a long meeting, but it was at that meeting that I discovered his background in RNA research, his connection with a lot of the issues right now that are really exploding in the media. But he is a spirit-filled Christian man, loves Jesus, and I believe when he tells you, he'll let you know that is the most important thing in his life. And so his care and concern for what people are going through today comes from that place. He just happens to have a lifetime of experience in the science and technology behind it to be able to share. So after that meeting that I had with him, I called up Daniel and Anthony, and I said, let's get together at Smoky Bones Tabernacle, and we have to have a meeting. I've got somebody you're going to want to meet. So without any further delay, let me turn it over to Dr. Bonilla and let him introduce himself to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It is a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for being here. And I want to start by saying something about me. I like to have relations with people, and that's how I communicate, through a relational level. So I am glad to be here, and I just want to encourage all of you to become a more active part into this process. And what I like to achieve by the end of tonight, or the end of the 4 sessions that we are participating, is that you are well informed. Because there is a lot of misinformation out there. We are bombarded every day, every minute with misinformation. And I just want to come out and say, this is the science. And if I do a good job, I can tell you that by the end of the 2 sessions, you should get out of here with peace in your heart, because that is what I want to pursue, that you are well informed so that you are empowered to make the right decisions. And that decision is going to be yours, and yours alone. I was blessed to be born in Colombia, in the mountains of Colombia, where nature and diversity is just wonderful. And I love nature, and I respect nature. And I knew that I was going to be a scientist when I was only 10 years old. I'm just curious to study nature and to see how the beautiful creation that we enjoy works. That is something. So I did my elementary school and high school and college in Colombia, the first year of college. And I have actually a reference to that later on, what I learned throughout. And then I moved to the US 45 years ago. 45 years ago this month, actually. So this is a good month to be here. But anyhow, one of the things that really attracted me to this country was freedom. Amen. Freedom and opportunity. Those are two things that really I enjoy. And I said to people, I am so blessed to have come to this country 45 years ago when it was really in the booming stage. I'm really blessed to have been able to come to this country and enjoy the blessings that we have. And we are all highly blessed, even when we don't see them as evident. You and I, we are highly blessed.
Dr. Bonilla, could you share a little bit about your professional background? Just because we know you, but I know that the public is probably not aware, and they'd probably be interested to hear a little bit about your professional background. I have here, and I hope I can get the title right, one of the books that you've written is called The Handbook of Analysis of Oligonucleotides and Related Products. I wouldn't probably have looked that up on Amazon, but I know that it's there. And I was impressed. I couldn't believe the price of the book, number one. It was definitely in the 3 digits.
I have one here available.
There it is. Yeah, hold it up and wave it around. So in the acknowledgments in that book, I was reading the paragraph that described Dr. Bonilla, and there was one sentence that really struck out at me. It said, Dr. Jose Bonilla has extensive experience in the management of industrial and pharmaceutical analytical laboratories in compliance with regulatory requirements and is the author and co-author of several peer-reviewed publications. I thought those two things together gave you a unique qualification for the topics that we're going to be going over tonight and next Wednesday. Could you share with us a little bit about your research specifically in genomics and in RNA and the specific DNA research that you've been involved with?
Yes. One of the blessings that I have received is to be able to be in the management area of research, because that really gives you a really broad area of knowledge and expertise. I really had a chance to learn a lot throughout. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a very curious person, so I love to learn. And the Bible says that we must be humble, that and you need a level of humbleness to be able to learn. And because if I think that I know it all, I am full and there is nothing to go in. But anyhow, I came into the area of genomics specifically. Of course, genomics is a real broad area, which I hope I can introduce you to from the beginning to where we are today, because that's actually a critical path to understand, because that's part of the problem that we have with the vaccine today. It's part of this whole body of genomics, and I hope I can walk you through in the most obvious and simple way so that we can understand why we are here and what the what the problems are with imposed scientific knowledge. But anyhow, when I came into the genomics area, it was in the area that I came in was in the synthesis of RNA and DNA, which, by the way, that's what oligonucleotides are. Is a generic name for oligonucleotide is a generic name for DNA and RNA of the short chain. But anyhow, that was when I came into this area. It's a very small field. You can count on your hands the number of people that are at that level of a specialty. And it was kind of the beginning of this area of expertise. But I was able to work with the top scientists around the world, not only in the US, but in Europe and Canada. The top scientists involved in this kind of research. And in another slide, I'll show you how this works out all together with the genomics area. But anyhow, I was able to work with the top scientists to come up with this book, which became the reference, the global reference for the research of oligonucleotides, namely DNA and RNA. I am sure those that have been involved in the synthetic DNA, synthetic RNA that is being used for the vaccine, they have run into this book. This is a global reference for this kind of research.
You wrote that book, right? You wrote that book?
I wrote 2 chapters. Actually, let me check. It's over 20, 19 chapters. And I am the editor and author of 2 chapters. And all the other scientists are contributors from other parts of the world.
If you don't mind, Dr. Bonilla, tell us, if you had to give us a definition of genomics, how would you give us a definition of that? Because some people are not even sure what that exactly means.
We start from a word, a term that is very common. You said that is in your genes, is in the genetics, is in your DNA. So the term, just like we call oligonucleotides, is a generic name for a family of DNA and RNA.
So genomics is simply the study of the genes, mainly?
That is
and that's
correct.
DNA
that
and RNA.
Exactly, yeah.
And you wrote specifically about how the DNA and the RNA is integrated and synthesized.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a manual, or the area that I was working with is the synthetic DNA that God had put inside of each one of us. It's essentially a blueprint for who you are. That's what DNA, that's why we say that is in your DNA, or that is in your genes. So that's where all the information, in fact, as I walked through the human genome, how many have you heard or read about the Human Genome Project?
I've heard about
Human Genome Project.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
It lasted over 12 years with the top scientists from 7 countries. It is, in my opinion, as a scientist, I think it's the biggest project in human history. Unfortunately, it has not gotten a lot of exposure to the public, and probably because I said, if one of you was to buy this book and to keep this book, there is no use to the regular street person, because this is just very highly scientific, and when you open it, like, what is this? And so the same thing happened to the human genome. It didn't really get a lot of publicity because it's highly scientific.
Dr. Bonilla, several years ago, and I suppose I would guess probably like most of you, I had always heard about genetics, understood chromosomes, learned about it in school, understood it, from a layman's standpoint. But it really showed up on our radar in terms of the public not too many years ago when we heard terms like designer babies. And we begin to hear reports of scientific research being used in the U.S. to work on genetically straining out unwanted qualities and features so that I think the futuristic goal was that parents could probably strain out weaknesses, health weaknesses, maybe other characteristics in their background as they were producing babies. And we heard about it. It was fascinating. Then the whole topic just seemed to disappear. What do you know about that? Were you involved in any genetic research like that? And why did that sort of peak, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, and then it didn't, we really don't hear anything about it. And I don't think it's been until the development of this vaccine that we've really heard a lot of talk again about RNA and why, and how it impacts us on a street level.
Yes, I'm hoping that I will have a chance to take you through a very short tour and a simple tour of what genomics is. But to answer your question, we have the capability. And not, again, because it's such a specialized area of scientific research, it doesn't get too much out into the public. But we do have the capability now to do anything to change any trait in a human being.
When we spoke that morning, 2-3 hour thing, there were about a handful of things that I came away from that, and I'd have to say, it's not that I had never heard them before, but I'd never really heard them put to me that forcefully from a Christian, and made that clear. One of the things I want to bring up and just get you to comment on is you were talking about the general practice of treating people. And that was in the midst of talking about just the controversies about the vaccine, and people were, some people, most people probably were very much for it, some people were a little bit apprehensive. And you talked about the degrading of humanity in science and medical research. And you mentioned the term herd medicine versus precision medicine. And I understood, took me a few minutes, but I understood what you were saying. But I don't think most of us have really thought that there are two ways that researchers and medical practitioners approach dealing with the public, is that herd medicine mentality versus precision medicine. Perhaps you could comment on that and why it's so important to us in terms of this conversation we're going to be having.
Yes. I guess we can start with the fingerprint that we all are familiar with. We are all different. We are, just fingerprint-wise, we are all different. That's why we use the fingerprint to identify people. And so are we. You probably heard of the genetic map. It's nothing else but the map of each specific person with the genes. And that's how you start in changing any kind of character in the human being with your genes. You look for a specific gene that is, for example, the responsible gene for your blue eyes, or the specific gene responsible for your flat nose or pointy nose, whatever. You find those, and that's how you alter the characters. So anyhow, we are all different. We are all created in a very specific way from our very creator. I guess I forgot to say at the beginning, I am a scientist, but first and most, I'm a spiritual being. And so I always look, and I said, I forgot to say at the beginning, everything flows from the spiritual side, everything. We know traditionally it has been accepted the idea that we are a spirit, soul, and body. The three always go together, but the main is the spirit, and everything flows from the spirit. If everything does, then everything ends up fine. But anyhow, the reason is why we were talking about that topic is because every human being around the world is different. Genetically, the genetic map is absolutely different. And and that is actually the top of medical research. The fact that you can be identified for anything, any of your traits, medically. The doctor, the specialist can address your issues specifically on your genetic map. And I don't know if some of you might have traced your roots through a genetic test. Have anyone have done that? Because I know that a lot of people have done it. And that's actually one way to use your genetic map in that way.
So to get clarity here, excuse me for interrupting you, Dr. Bonilla, it sounds like to me personalized precision medicine means that you are acknowledging the uniqueness of everybody's unique DNA, right?
Absolutely. That's really the key. So when a specialist in the medical area come to look at any trait, any diseases or any trait that you are concerned about, then specifically that gene area is, that's what is called precision medicine, or because it is specific to you. And I guess you wanted to see the contrast with the fact that we are now a herd. We are not different, we are a herd that everyone should be vaccinated.
Yeah, that's why I was wanting to know why we were going there, because it's mainly you feel like this vaccine is too broad.
Absolutely.
For the diversity of people that it's receiving the vaccine, and that's where your grave concerns are?
Absolutely. That's one of the concerns in terms of the humanizing, because we are all different. One size does not fit all. And so that is part of the humanizing. But we will talk about that in probably the third session. Is the other part that I didn't mention in that conversation is we are bringing a microbial material into the human body. And my idea, what I'm proposing, what I like to propose to the National Institute of Health is that instead of bringing material from the microbial bodies, we should research and find out what materials we can borrow from the human body itself, instead of borrowing from the microbial world, which we do in the regular vaccines. That's what you get. But we can use our own God-given DNA or RNA.
So you're basically saying we need to have other solutions than the current approach, which is vaccines. Strange genetic material coming into our body. We should use our own genetic material, and you feel like that will take us to better solutions.
Yes. That's one thing that I'm proposing to the research institutions, that we do need to go up in the ladder of research. And that's really one thing that I want to bring into the game of scientific research. We need to get better. We need to do better. So I'm not here to specifically trash or criticize, but to encourage that we need to do better in the scientific and medical research. Is that simple? There are a lot of opportunities. This is the general structure discovered in 1953, the structure of DNA. Okay, so there were two scientists that discovered the structure of DNA, and this is the reason why I wanted to work with this specific slide, is because that's the basic understanding of the genome, the human genome. So this was discovered in 1953. It turns out that that was a fantastic year, because that's also the year when I was born. So anyhow, you can see it's a helical structure. And when we talk about mapping, you can see those letters. Those are essentially what Dr. Collins, the director of the Human Genome Project, he calls it the language of God. By the way, if you are curious, there is this book is The Language of God by Francis Collins. That is available in Amazon, and it's I don't necessarily agree with everything that is said there, but just the essence of the book, because it is the language of God. So anyhow, you see that there's several letters there, and that's a designation to a part of the molecule that contains the information or the blueprint for everything that you have in your body. Everything is coded right there. In fact, some people refer to this molecule, to this DNA, as the code of life, because that's what it is, the code of life. Everything that the human body needs is in this molecule. Everything, absolutely everything. And in the next slide, if you could go to the next one, just briefly. Do we have time, or should we?
Take your time.
Okay. So anyhow, you see the double helix structure over here, and the traditional understanding is that at the time when something needs to be made in your body, whether it's a new tissue or new molecule, whatever, the information is brought out of the DNA. Again, remember, the DNA is the blueprint. All the information that the human body needs is right in there. It's a huge, huge molecule, and maybe we can go in the third session, we can go in more detail. But anyhow, what happened is the DNA opens up, and little pieces with the information go to make tissue, to make proteins, to make any molecules that your body needs to function properly, to function ordinarily. So, and that's the molecule over here in the center is the RNA, and it's called, actually normally it's called the messenger RNA. Why? Because it is transferring the message from the code to the actual building of proteins. So it's called messenger RNA, and that's how you guys know it, mRNA. Okay, so that is, and one of the things that I should mention here, so that you understand the issues, the way it works in your body is. How many people here have had a organ transfer or any kind of organ put in either any surgery that involved a new member of your body? Because one of the most beautiful things from the scientific and medical perspective is the immune system. The immune system is there to protect the body from anything that doesn't recognize that it doesn't belong here. Anything that it doesn't belong here, it needs to get rid of it, and there are mechanisms to take care of that. But anyhow, we are injecting two things. Actually, we are injecting one thing. The mRNA, which doesn't belong there, is man-made, is man-made, so it is foreign. And the first thing that your body is going to notice is this doesn't belong here. And to make it even worse, when you produce the protein, now you don't have only the mRNA, you also have a protein that the body will recognize it doesn't belong here. So that's the short-term problem that we encounter. Now, the long-term, which we will probably touch again in session 4, is that these changes, these genetic changes, they will not result only on a short-term rejection or a short-term reaction, but it goes to second and third generation. You will wait in your body to show up in the future generations. And that is a severe, severe problem that I see from the scientific and medical perspective. Because it's just going to sit there to express itself, to show up in the next generations, which takes a long time. And one of the problems that I see from the scientific perspective is when something shows up, either an organ that is not working well, short, too small, too big, whatever, or doesn't work, how are you going to prove that that is due to a vaccine that you took 5 years ago or 10 years ago? It is a difficult thing to make the connection, the link. And so that's really the reason why I wanted to use this slide to kind of explain that part, the immune system.
Your name,
Hi, my
question.
name's Pam, and my question is, if I'm understanding correctly, with the mRNA, it's actually creating a protein that's foreign to the body. So
Yes.
we would expect an inflammatory response, and then would that also lead to greater problems with autoimmune diseases?
That is correct. And of course, one of the central reasons is that we are all different. So different people are going to experience different response in different ways. But it's a response, it's a rejection, essentially. That's why I was asking about surgeries with implants, because one of the first things that the doctor will tell you is that rejection is one of the beauties, one of the marvelous things about the human body, that is protecting, always protecting your body.
Okay, next.
Hi, my name's Marilyn. To piggyback off of what she said, I'm concerned about long-term inflammation, and I keep reading about these spike proteins and how they're being inserted into the cell. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, what the vaccine that you will get is essentially the mRNA. The mRNA, once it is inside your body, is going to produce that protein that people talk about, the spike protein. And so now the body has to deal with two things, with the mRNA that doesn't belong there, and the protein that was produced that doesn't belong there either.
And basically that stays with you. You can't really rid it. Once you get it, it's there.
It really depends. There are ways that the immune system can deal with that, but it really depends. I don't know how it's going to deal with this specific protein. But there are ways to do that, and one of them is to cut them, to destroy the protein and
How do you destroy the protein? How would you destroy the protein? You did like scissors. You got some scissors or something?
There are ways that the body is able to destroy the protein by breaking it down. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Joanne. I'm just wondering what your ideas are on the Delta variant that they're talking about on the news. They're supposed to be coming in another wave.
The Delta variant?
Yeah.
Okay. She's asking about the Delta variant. May bring another wave.
That's one thing. I'm glad that you asked that, because that is one thing that I want to request to research institutions, specifically the National Institute of Health, that we have focused in the wrong thing. We have focused on the virus, and we are fighting the virus with a specific vaccine. And one of the things that is well known is that the virus by nature mutate. They are continuously changing. So it doesn't make sense to take a vaccine for a specific virus. Why? Because then in a few weeks or a few months, when a different variant comes, you need to take another vaccine because the previous doesn't work.
It's kind of like the flu shot because it's in the same family of viruses, right?
Yeah, it is.
And they don't get the flu shot right hardly any year. It really, it's a hit or miss, right?
Right.
So is it fair to say that the COVID vaccines are a hit or miss? It's not really hitting the target?
What the corporations that make the vaccine, they refer to that as the efficiency. So normally in the past, when you get a flu, if you were doing 60, you were doing well. But this time around, they claim that is in the 90s or 80, 90, which is relatively high but is their claim.
But it is already mutating.
Yes, it
The
is.
Delta variant is already
Yeah,
demonstrating what these type of viruses typically do, and it will mutate, and we will probably have from the ivory palaces, hey, you got to get some more shots. And we're going to continue the insanity. Government control could ramp up, and it goes into ridiculousness.
And that is really the most worrisome part, from my perspective, is that in one of the questions that I want to ask is, we will become slaves to the virus. Why? Because every time that comes around as a new variant, you have to use something different.
What is the survival
Thank you.
rate for the COVID-19 virus?
Say that again.
What's the survival rate? I know what it is, but I want you to say it because they respect what you have to say.
That I don't know.
Okay, well, it's over 99% for all demographics, and for younger people, it's like 99.5 or 99.7, but yet we're acting like everybody's going to die unless we get this vaccine.
It's definitely quite large, but.
Okay, so for people who have not been vaccinated and are around people who are vaccinated, is there such thing as shedding?
I'm not very familiar with the process, but it is very possible that it's related to the rejection of the protein that is produced. But I really have not researched that much. That would be my first thought.
Okay, and then
All right,
my other question,
Go ahead.
is there a way to detox? It was kind of the other lady's kind of question. Is there a way to detox for people who have been vaccinated?
I would say that from my perspective, there are natural ways to detox. But it is, I guess, if that is a problem, I wouldn't take the vaccine to begin with. If you want to detox afterwards.
Okay, what would be some of those? Do you know of specific things they can do to detox, or is that something we need to pursue someone else?
I guess there are two ways. One is what I call the chemical way, which is through actually cleaning up the blood. That's one way. But
Cleaning up the blood.
Yeah. Which is really a difficult and a terrible way to do it, but
And how do you do that?
there are actually ways to clean and screen. Yes, similar, and I don't really know the specifics or what the machines do, but essentially you have to just filter the blood through.
Pastor Nick and some people are calling out chelation. Chelation is a...
That would be one way, but we can go into a much longer, into much more extended conversation, because I am into the natural way. In fact, what I said to people is that I put it in a very simple way. I say, our Father has given to us in His creation everything that we need for a healthy life. And I'm
Come on, somebody.
Hey, we're going to go ahead and let's take a question from the chat. Charlotte asks, isn't it true that some people, when they receive a vaccine, it doesn't take or provide immunity?
Yeah, I think that's what you were commenting already, that a lot of times the effective level is not there for everyone. So it is true.
Next.
Hi, Kaylee. She pretty much asked my question, but vaccines shed some live vaccines, and this I looked on the Pfizer pages of symptoms or whatnot, and it said transferring. So there's a level of transferring when you get the vaccine that either through saliva or through, I don't know if it's droplet or sweat. Could you speak to that, or you said you're not really sure yet?
Could you rephrase the question?
If I were to get the shot, could somebody else somehow get part of the vaccine transferred to them? through?
I don't think so. In the extreme case, if the mRNA, you're talking about the mRNA that was injected.
Okay.
In the extreme case that it gets destroyed by your immune system and is rejected somehow, either through saliva or any other fluids in your system, because that would be the easiest way to eliminate. It is possible, but if that is the case, it should be harmless at that point.
Well, we got about 4 minutes, so we can hurry and get through these last two questions, and we'll go on to session 2.
My name is Phoebe, and my question is this vaccine, since we have such a high survival rate of the COVID virus, not only unnecessary, but is it also gene therapy?
Yes, and we will go into that actually in the next session into more detail, but you could call it that. And the problem is that we play with terminology, with terms to try to dismiss the dangers of different things. And that will be one way we'll be talking.
So changing our DNA in a way is also changing the creation of God.
Absolutely. That's a major problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jason. So my question is, in the media, you always hear about COVID cases, you hear about COVID death, but one thing you don't ever hear about is COVID reinfections. So how common are COVID reinfections? I had COVID last summer, and I don't plan on getting the vax, so I was just wondering, do I have natural immunity or can I get the virus again?
The problem is what we talked about before, is the variants. Because the virus is changing continuously, is mutating. So let's say, and I think that's probably related to your question, if you were vaccinated last month, could you get infected now? And the answer is yes. And I think we are experiencing that. We know that we are experiencing that.
Okay.
Reinfection from a new variant.
So you can get reinfected whether you have the vax or not have the vax?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because the antibodies are specific to the virus that you were exposed to.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that was one of the most significant things you said tonight, from my opinion, with absolute clarity. I think we're understanding, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm getting a clear understanding that this virus is a family of viruses that mutate. And the vaccine is going to help you get antibodies to attack this particular version, but it's continually mutating. And wow, what a powerful statement. We, if we're not careful, can become enslaved to this virus. And people that are buying into fear mongering, they're just going to be this constant dose of fear. And here's the thing that concerns me, the ramping up of the other voices saying, you people that aren't getting vaccinated are the problem. Are you hearing that ramping up? Are you hearing the volume go up on that? And so I want to tell you something. I think we have to be absolutely defiant. And if there was anybody, not that we got to go out in the streets, I'm saying I think we have to fight for our freedom. The guy in the sound booth right now, I don't want to embarrass him, he just changed his job because his previous job said you can no longer work here unless you get the vaccine. He turned in his resignation and got a better job. Okay, so I think that's the war we're in, because really where this leads to, and I don't know if this is, I think we have to be careful not to get involved in conspiracy theories, but if there is somebody behind the curtain like China, that has a plan, they can't beat us. No one's been able to beat us with nuclear weapons in our military. Now they're using other strategies. If this is part of that, then we can't get sucked into giving our government all this control, because we're no longer a freedom, liberty, and justice for all country. We're moving toward totalitarianism under the guise of this is a good deal, and that's the way all countries go towards a bad place. Oh, well, this is good. Well, we need to do this. No. We must be defiant. We must find our backbone. I know you guys are those people, otherwise you wouldn't be here, you that are watching online. Let's give Dr. Bonilla a big hand for what he's done for us tonight. Come on, somebody, let's give it up for our great guy sticking his neck out there. Coming out of retirement, he's upset about what's being said.